Can you describe what you do so we don't screw it up like we do every year?
And like we already have today.
Well, I'm a parapsychologist, and for the last 22 years, I've been investigating haunted house poltergeist cases. And during that time, I've investigated about 850 cases.
All right, now, one of the ones we want you to focus on, and then we're going to kind of update and find out where you've been for the last couple of years that we haven't talked to you. You're probably your most documented case that you yourself were brought in on and brought your people in and set up your stuff and you checked out was what eventually became the film The Entity.
That's correct.
And that this lady reported to you that she was being raped by a ghost or whatever.
Right.
So why don't you tell us that entire situation?
Okay, well, I bumped into her in a bookstore. She overheard me talking about my research, and she told me that her house was haunted. So I sat down and talked to her, and she convinced me that it was worth investigating. So we went out to her house. I had a colleague at that time named Barry Taft, and we brought some cameras and tape recorders, and we interviewed her first. And for about 2 hours, she told us some incredible stories. And then at the end of the 2 hours, I knew she was holding something back. And I finally convinced her to tell me what it was, and at that time she said that she was raped and beaten by the ghost. Now at that point we thought she was probably delusional, so we left. And a few days later she called us back and said 5 people had witnessed the phenomenon in her house. So we went back again to check it out.
All right, now at that point when you heard her say 5 people have witnessed this, what was your reaction? You perked up and you thought...
Well, this is what we're always looking for as researchers, is independent verification of the phenomena. So she didn't say that they witnessed her being attacked, they just witnessed an apparition in the home. So we went back there to check it out again, and my interest in doing research is to go into the environment and try to document whether there is some kind of objective basis to the phenomena, to move it out of the illusion, hallucination, and fraud range. And so we bring in equipment and we set up shop and we just sit around and wait and hope. And
Equipment, photography equipment?
Yes, we bring in photographic equipment, recording equipment, and other equipment to monitor the environment in
temperatures and that kind of thing?
Right.
Okay.
So in this particular case, things started happening almost immediately. Little flicks of light started to appear in the bedroom, and we were trying to photograph them, but they were happening so quickly we couldn't photograph them. Then I was standing in the kitchen, and a lower cabinet door slammed open, and a pan came flying out. Now, this was really cool because the trajectory was elliptical. It landed about 4 feet from the cabinet. So I immediately ripped open the cabinet to see if there were any little midgets throwing pans at me or...
any kind of mechanism.
If there was some kind of mechanism in there, and there was nothing. A few moments later, the lady screamed out, "It's in my bedroom," and I went running into the bedroom. And we had 2 cameras, a 35mm camera and a Polaroid camera. She shouted out, "It's in the corner," and I fired the Polaroid camera, and the picture came out bleached out white completely. There was just no picture there. It was just all bleached out. A few minutes later, she shouted out again, "It's in the corner," and again I fired the camera, and the picture was bleached out again completely. Now at this point, I just thought the camera was malfunctioning. I didn't really think much of it. So then I took 2 control pictures, meaning I waited until she said the ghost was gone. Then I fired 2 regular pictures, and they were perfect pictures.
When she was saying it's in the corner, you couldn't see it.
Right.
She saw it? Did she say she saw it or she felt it?
No,
or?
she saw it.
Now, what was her disposition at this time when she yells it's in the bedroom? And
Well, she was very excited. I mean, she's got people here now that are on her side, basically. So she was excited about it and not nearly as frightened as she was
because she's with someone.
when she was alone, sure.
Right. What did she see, Kerry?
Well, she saw a figure. She couldn't describe it any more than that, but some kind of male figure. But then a few moments later, we felt a cold breeze of air coming through the door, accompanied by a horrible stench. And this stench was so bad, people were vomiting. But it was localized. You could move in and out of it. And I fired the camera in the direction of this cold breeze of air, which was at a doorway that was shut. And the picture came out bleached out white again, but you could see the doorway in the background, and underneath the door, you see a round ball of light. And this is very intriguing because we'd cut off all the lights, and there was no metal on the door for the flash to reflect off. So then a few moments later, she shouted out, "It's right in front of my face." And this is probably the best picture because I fired the camera, and her whole face was obliterated. Now, it was so exciting because those were her exact words. And in parapsychology, we never get anything twice. But a few moments later, she shouted out again, "It's right in front of my face." And again, we fired the camera, and again, her whole face was obliterated. So she's 4 for 4 right now. A moment later, I wanted a control picture, so I just waited until she said it was gone. She said it was gone, fired the camera again, and it was a perfect picture. So she's now 5 for 5. If Polaroid film malfunctions to the way a person speaks, we've got something pretty incredible going on there. So we talked to Polaroid, and of course they couldn't explain it. And it was great because it was immediate feedback. Normally when we're taking pictures, we have to process the film. We don't know if we have anything. But this was just like a kid in a candy store. I mean, this was very exciting because we were finding out immediately that there was something unusual going on. So we decided to start a full-scale investigation. Now, what that means to someone like me is we start bringing in other observers, we bring in more photographers, we bring in psychics and mediums.
It's almost like an attorney who decides, I will take your case.
That's right.
And you really start going
That's
after
right.
it.
And we have to pick and choose because we have a limited amount of time. And we get so many calls. So we have to choose the cases that lend themselves best to research. For example, visual phenomena is the type of case that I'm going to be more interested in because we can go in and photograph it. Whereas if they're just talking about hearing footsteps, I may not be as interested. Or if they say, we had an apparition 10 years ago, but nothing's happened since, I'm not going to investigate that case because I'm not interested in collecting stories. I want to do firsthand research. I want to be there when it's happening. So we brought in a lot of people. We set up shop there, and we held a seance. Now, a lot of people wonder why a seance. Well, a seance is a traditional method to try to get something to happen, to try to catalyze the environment. And since the people in the haunted house or the alleged haunted house live there, they're far more likely to experience the phenomena than I am when I just come in and do the research. So we used the seance with the idea that maybe this will help bring out whatever's there or give us a chance to document whatever's there. So we started holding a seance, and within a few moments, light started to appear on the wall, and it started getting bigger and bigger and brighter. And of course, this was very exciting. We had taken a lot of pictures, and in our pictures, we were seeing faces and figures, and we'd bring those back to UCLA and talk to other people at the university, and they would say, well, we think this is a Rorschach image. We don't think this is real. Now, a Rorschach image is kind of like an ink blot where you look at it and you see forms in the ink blot. Or if you look up in the clouds, you might see faces. And the reason they were saying this is because the paint on the wall was very uneven. And it was an old, dilapidated house, and we were using high-speed film that has a certain penetrating power. So they thought that maybe we were drawing images out of that that situation. So what we did was we hung up black pieces of cardboard, covered every inch of the wall to create a uniform surface. We covered every inch of the ceiling in the same manner. And we numbered them, and we put magnetic orientation up on the board so that we could see where we were when we shot our pictures, because we were shooting in the dark, literally. So the light starts to appear, as I said a moment ago, and then it starts to move around on these boards. And finally, I just started talking to it. And I said, blink 3 times for yes on board number 5, and blink twice for no on board number 3. And it would do it on the exact board I asked it to. Now, at this point, everybody in the room is tremendously excited because it appeared that we were communicating with something intelligent. But I was still very concerned that there was some jerk in the back with a flashlight just faking it. And this is something that we, as researchers, always have to be very, very cautious about. So I shouted out to it, if you're really here, come off the wall. And I didn't really expect anything, but it immediately just pulled out of the wall, floated into the middle of our seance circle, started spinning and twisting and expanding in different directions simultaneously. It had full parallax. We could see it from all sides. It was a laser light show. It was absolutely incredible. Now, we'd sealed off the entire room. Windows, doors, no light was coming in. The room was dark. We had one candlelight, and this light was moving around the room. Little parts of it would break off and shoot across the room. And it wasn't the kind of thing where people were saying, did you see that? No. Did you see that? It would last for up to a minute. We were all observing it while it was going through these undulating motions. And I had 9 professional photographers in the room firing from every angle. And I heard them firing while we were viewing the phenomena. Most of our film came out blank, unexposed. Yet this light was so bright, it was lighting up our faces in the dark. It was reflecting off the metals on the camera. It was lighting up the whole ceiling. It was really quite extraordinary, but some of our pictures did come out. We experienced this phenomena over and over again, which is very unusual for us as researchers. Generally, we get one shot at something, but this kept happening over and over again. We conducted an 11-week investigation, and we would go back there with new people, new witnesses, and the lights would keep appearing. Now, to really imagine what this is like, you have to imagine going home today after work when it's dark, going into your bedroom, shutting off all the lights, sitting down in a chair, and having that room just illuminated with spinning, twisting balls of light that are flying around. You then go out, bring some friends back in because you're not sure if you're hallucinating, and they all experience it too.
What were you sensing from this lady in your return visits, your many return visits? Was she trusting you more and more? Was she happy to see you? Please come in, take care of this?
Yeah, she definitely went through some major changes. She was terrified out of her mind initially, and then she started to feel that she had a team on her side and that there was some credibility to her experiences, that she wasn't really going nuts because other people were observing the phenomena.
And that's very important.
Absolutely, because she would tell people that she was being attacked or raped, and they would, of course, immediately assume that she was crazy. So we started to experience the phenomena, but we never saw her being attacked. And we ourselves were never attacked. But her 16-year-old had a terrifying experience. She had 4 children, 16, 12, 10, and 6. And the 16-year-old heard her screaming one night, and he ran into her room. He saw her being thrown around on her bed. He reached over and screamed out, "Mom," to help her. And as he did that, he was hit over the back of his head and thrown across the room. And he broke his right arm during that experience. Now, this, of course, is his testimony. We weren't there to observe that. But an interesting sidelight in making the film, when we were shooting that scene, the actor playing him during the filming of that exact scene broke his right arm also.
Wow.
So that just sent a chill through the whole crew.
Now, this lady had claimed that she was, in fact, being raped and attacked by this spirit or spirits.
Right. She was raped. I mean, she was being beaten. We know that. She had big black and blue marks all over her. She had bite marks on her neck, bite marks on her breast. We would go back to UCLA and they would say, well, it's self-inflicted, but who can bite their neck? It's quite a trick anyway. She was beaten, and it happened continually during our investigation. But we don't know what did it. We don't know if it was a boyfriend. We don't know if it was, we don't know what it was because it never happened in our presence. But she described it as 3 entities. One would hold her wrist, the other would hold her ankles, and these were smaller entities. And then the third one, a larger entity, would attack her. And for her, of course, it was trauma. It was terrifying. And for the children, it was terrifying. But they never saw any of this type of stuff. They never witnessed. They weren't the object of this entity.
It was her.
All the phenomena was directed at her. And this made it very personal. We were never attacked. They had friends come to the house that were never attacked. The children were never attacked. It was only her.
Did she ever go through any psychiatric help?
Well, she was evaluated, but she didn't want to pursue that. She felt that she would simply be labeled as a crazy person, and she knew that her experiences were real and wanted essentially us to confirm that. So we set up our cameras and we fired a lot of pictures, and we eventually caught the light flying across the room. Now, initially, we would come back and talk to people at UCLA about our experiences. We had a lab there. I mean, we were working out of a lab there that was run by Dr. Thelma Moss, a very prominent researcher in the field of parapsychology. And we would come back and talk to different people at the university and tell them about our experiences, and they will say, well, you're obviously hallucinating. And I would just look at them and go, we've got 20 witnesses. And they would say, well, it's mass hallucination.
So then, that explains it.
Yeah. So then I finally was able to bring some of these photographs back where we photographed the light with a tail behind it moving across the room. And I said, when was the last time you photographed a hallucination? Of course, this didn't convince them. But some people can't be convinced. But it was an extraordinary case, and things kept happening over and over again. At one point, these poster boards that we had put on the wall and ceiling, we had hung them up with the strongest tape there is, a metallic tape they use in jet engines. And at one point, we heard the tape start to rip, and it was a piece of tape about 1 foot long. And I looked up, and I saw it just slowly ripping as if by unseen hands. And the board falls. There were about 20 of us in the room. It just kind of flies around the room a little bit, then smashes on the woman's head who lived in the house. So she let out the scream of the month, of course, and that ended our investigation for that evening. But that could have hit any of us.
Yeah, but, okay, so you end your investigation for that evening. You guys leave, and she stays there. I would not let you out of the house if I was that lady.
Okay, one of the questions we get asked a lot is, why didn't she just leave? Why didn't she move? And I don't have a great answer for that. I can give you her answer. She was very poor. She had 4 children, no husband. And she felt that she just couldn't. She felt that she just couldn't afford to do anything.
Was there a man in her life at this time?
She had a boyfriend, yes.
Did you meet him?
Yes.
What kind of person was he?
He seemed okay, but he didn't hang around for too long because, well, I'll tell you his experience. He saw something on her. He was over at her house, and he saw some kind of form on her. And his response was he picked up a guitar and tried to smash it and ended up hitting her, obviously. Well, not obviously, but ended up hitting her. And so that pretty much threw their relationship apart.
Were you convinced that her black and blue marks were not at the result of his fist?
No.
You're
No.
convinced of that?
No, I'm not convinced of
I
it.
see.
I really
Okay.
have no way of knowing. Absolutely no way of knowing. In fact, all of our boards were torn down one night, and she called me up hysterical and that she was beaten and all the boards were torn down. And I went over there, and she was a mess. But there were no witnesses. So I'm a researcher. I need evidence. And I really don't know what happened. And I don't know if an entity actually really attacked her or not. But I do know that we experienced a plethora of phenomena during our investigation that I will never forget.
So that tends to make you believe her stories and what she's reporting are true.
Well, it certainly gives credibility to the idea that there was something going on there and that she wasn't hallucinating about all of this, that there really was phenomena.
So during the 11 weeks that you were investigating her story, the rapes continued.
Yes.
Did they begin to drop off at a point?
Not during our investigation, but she moved. She eventually did move. And there are different types of haunts. Sometimes people are haunted, sometimes places are haunted. And when a person is haunted, we generally call that poltergeist phenomena. We see it as objects moving around near the person, lights going on and off. And this always has a proximity effect. It always happens within maybe 10 or 12 feet of the person. This is a testable hypothesis because we can take the poltergeist agent out of the house and the phenomena will stop. We bring them back into the house, the phenomena picks up again.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, we weren't just talking about poltergeist phenomena. We weren't just talking about object movements. We were seeing forms. At one point, this light that I'm describing to you formed a head and then shoulders extended all the way down to the ground.
And you saw that?
We saw it. It was maybe 2 feet from us. This was about a 6 to 7 foot figure, male. We couldn't make out any features. But the moment it extended from head all the way down to the ground, the moment it took full shape, it just went out like somebody pulled the plug or something.
Could you see facial features?
No, we couldn't make out any features at all. It was kind of a greenish, whitish, blobbish thing that formed into a figure.
Was there ever any sound?
There was no sound associated with it, but certainly the emotional feeling we all had was that it ran out of power, that it was just there was this incredible effort being made to manifest. And then as it finally did that, it just lost power and nobody could shout out, more power, Scotty. But
When she moved, did the entity follow her?
yeah, she moved, it followed her, and I knew it would, and I had told my colleague at the time, and we had agreed that it would.
What made you feel that it would?
Well, because of the nature of the case itself. They had lived in the house for 5 years, nothing had ever happened. So it wasn't a traditional kind of haunt. And all the phenomena was centered around her. It wasn't affecting the children. So I felt that wherever she moved, she would be the central focus of it.
And that's in fact what happened.
Yeah, she was there for 2 months in this new home, and then she called us. And we had an extraordinary experience in this new house. We went down there just with a tape recorder, and we didn't expect much. She told us that things were being taken out of the cabinets and toilets were flushing, but she hadn't actually seen anything. Well, the moment we got down there, she said, "It's here." It just came through the window. And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "The curtains parted." And I said, "Well, it's probably just the wind." And she said, "Well, they parted. They didn't just blow." So I said, "Okay, let's see what's happening." So we set up a little seance. We turned off the lights. We turned on my tape recorder. Now, we had found out in the other house that the son had told us this story, that when he put on a certain record album, his baseball cards were picked up and thrown all over the room. Now, being open-minded researchers who are basically desperate, we decided we would try anything. And so we put on the record, and sure enough, the phenomena increased every time we did it. So we decided to try this in her new house. So we sit down, we turn on my tape recorder, we put on the record, and we talk during the seance. Well, we're sitting there for about 5 or 7 minutes or so, and all of a sudden we get the scare of our lives. There's this incredible explosion right at our feet. Scared the hell out of everybody, and everyone's screaming. And I had stationed this girl by the lights, so I'm yelling out to her, turn on the lights, turn on the lights, turn on the lights, and finally, after about 10 times, she hits the light switch. What we found was that a giant flower pot had been thrown about 10 feet across the room. This pot was probably 10, 15 pounds in weight. It hit the ground with such force, it cracked the linoleum, it spread dirt all over the room, and it landed right in the middle of our circle. Now, at that point, we all recognized our mortality. If that had hit any of us, it would have been curtains. Now, the interesting thing is my tape recorder. I turned to my tape recorder, and it was off. Now, it was the middle of the tape. It shouldn't have been off. I rewound the tape, played it back, and we hear our voices, and we hear the record playing. Then all of a sudden, there's a 5-second pause. After that 5-second pause, we hear heavy footsteps accompanied by heavy breathing. It's very melodramatic. One would hit the ground, the other would hit and drag. One would hit, the other would hit and drag. It got louder and louder, meaning that something was approaching the mic, apparently. Then you hear a click. Tape recorder shuts off. Now, there are 3 impossible things here. First, our voices are no longer on tape. We were talking the whole time. Second, the record was playing the whole time. The record's no longer on tape. Third, could somebody in the room have walked up to that tape recorder and recorded footsteps and heavy breathing? No. It was a built-in mic. It was right against my leg. There's no way in the world anybody could have walked up to that without my hearing him. 3 impossible things. It's as if it erased our reality and replaced its own reality. Now, why footsteps and heavy breathing? Well, my feeling about that was that it was just its idea of what would scare us, something out of a bad movie. But the real intriguing thing is whether it can actually manipulate equipment this way, whether it's photographic equipment or recording equipment. And that's what really intrigued me about it. Now, is this good scientific evidence for ghosts? No, of course not. If I stand up in front of the AAAS and talk about this being a ghost here on tape, everyone's going to laugh me right out of the room. It sounds like a pervert, not a ghost. So, no, it's not good evidence. But I was there. It happened right in front of us.
All right. We are back. The Mark O'Brien program. One more break with Kerry Gaynor because we want, if you could, a follow-up on now what's happening to this lady and where. I know you can't tell us where she's at, but any information that's happened.
Sure. The good news about this is that it has a happy ending. She kept moving and the phenomena kept abating. And eventually it just diminished to just toilets flushing and very innocuous things like that.
Stopped touching her.
Yeah, she's not being attacked anymore. She's okay. She survived it.
Mentally okay.
Yeah, she survived it.
Tough woman.
She got tough, and she hung in there, and she outlasted it.
How often do you talk to her? Or has it been a while?
It's been a while, yeah. We don't talk to her too often anymore. But
you get the feeling she wants to kind of leave it behind her now?
Yeah, it was time for her to move on, and her children grew up and moved out, and she's on with her life now, and she's okay. But when I talk about a case like this, I like to balance it out a little. We don't normally investigate cases of such a violent nature. Most of our cases are playful, bizarre, mischievous. I mean, we had one case where they were rearranging the glasses and washing all the dishes at night, and
not a problem there.
Yeah,
really.
I think most of us would like that. We were going to call that rent-a-geist.
Yeah.
Now, the last time you were on the show, you ended the show by saying that you were just about to hop on a plane. You were going to, I think it was Ohio, and you were going to investigate a story of a lady who said that at night when she was sleeping, she would be awakened by a group of hooded men that would be literally surrounding her bed, and you were going to go and check that out.
You've got a good memory.
Well, you don't tend to forget one like that.
Well, yes, I did go out there. It was in the Midwest, and I spent a couple of days out there, and I interviewed about 12 different witnesses, and it was a very interesting case. They were seeing several apparitions. There was one apparition of a small child that had been witnessed by about 4 people, and there was another apparition of a woman that had been witnessed by several people. But I'm going to cut to the chase on this case because there was one event that really stood out above all others and, of course, impacted this woman the most. She had mentioned to me what you had just described, seeing a group of hooded figures around her bed, and that they were talking in an undertone. In other words, they were communicating among themselves, and it was loud enough for her to hear it, but not loud enough for her to understand it, or perhaps not some language that she could understand. But one night, she found herself in bed, and there was only one of these hooded figures there. And for the first time, this figure started to approach her. And she got very frightened. She saw it coming towards her, getting closer and closer. It then reached out its arm towards her, and she described it as having 3 digits. They grabbed her arm. They were cold and clammy. They started to yank her out of her bed. She started screaming hysterically. She grabbed onto the light fixture above her bed to stop them, or stop it, but it kept pulling her, and she ended up yanking the light fixture out of the wall. It dragged her over towards the window, but her leg got caught at the end of the bed, and she kind of got stuck, pinned there, and it was trying to drag her, and apparently it got frustrated or ran out of time or whatever it was, but it let her go and then just went through the window and took off. And she was totally traumatized by this and has had trouble sleeping ever since. Now, I know Brian is sitting there right now saying, why can't this happen to me? But
yeah, that's what he's saying.
This was obviously a terrifying experience for this woman, and I have no way of knowing if it's real or not. There were no witnesses to it.
Did you experience anything like you experienced with the original case?
No, not while I was there, but this is a hard case to investigate because it's away. You know, I live here in L.A.
Sure.
And I was only there for a couple of days. With the entity case, we went back over and over again. So it was not the kind of case that I could really investigate very well. Plus, the woman was so distraught from this experience that I made a decision at that time that to pursue the investigation might be just a bit much for her. So I decided to pull back and not pursue that investigation.
Did you ever hear an update from her as to...
Yeah, she writes me all the time.
And
things keep happening.
When you mentioned the 3 digits, the hoods, I have seen UFO films and alien extraterrestrial contact that deal with hoods and, of course, the fingers. Is that kind of where you are with that?
Well, there was a lot of haunting phenomena in the house. They were seeing apparitions of figures, you know, a small child and an older woman. So it's kind of a case that's a mixture of different types of phenomena.
Now, let us ask you this. You photographed some light. You've smelled things. You've felt cold. Have you yourself ever seen an apparition appear before you? Had it approach you? And have you been grabbed, shaken, thrown, hit?
I've never been harmed, but I have been grabbed, pushed, slapped, had pencils knocked out of my pocket. I've had my leg grabbed onto and held for about a minute, and that is a terrifying experience. I mean, there's something in the dark holding your leg.
And it's focused on you.
Yeah, and you can feel the fingers, you can see an impression in your pants, but you can't know what it is. You know, your adrenaline is racing, my heart's racing, adrenaline pumping. It's a terrifying experience, but it doesn't make me want to run out of the house. It makes me want to stay for more.
Now, so in your professional opinion, you believe without question that there is something that takes place.
Well, I think this is a very important area for research. I think we have an opportunity to take a quantum leap in our understanding of what we are and where we're heading and what life and death are all about. I really think we have a great opportunity here to learn a great deal. So, yeah, I think this is a valid area of research, but I don't know what the explanation is.
Where are you right now? Are you working now on a case?
Yes, I've got a case right now that was also in the Midwest. And this is a case that is totally new for me. It involves spontaneous scratch marks, and they were happening in front of witnesses. And I was flown out to this case by the television show Sightings, and I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours with the person who was having these experiences, and he was attacked over and over again in front of me with cameras on him. And,
in front of you?
Yes,
So
right in front of me.
You would see the scratch marks being made?
No, but I would see the scratch marks there one moment, and a moment earlier they weren't there. We would take off his shirt and photograph him and put his shirt back on, and a moment later there'd be a new scratch mark bleeding coming down his body. It was the most incredible experience I'd ever had, because even in the entity case, the attacks never occurred in front of us. But this was happening right in front of us. And From what I've been told by sightings, they're going to be airing this episode on November 13th. That's a Sunday, 6 o'clock on Channel 11. And we'll be showing some of the video that we shot there. So it's a very exciting case, and there's a lot more to it than that, but I'll leave it at that.
Kerry, it's very easy, it would seem, to, especially in the business, is to be swayed by money, I've never seen sightings, so I don't know if it's a quality show, if it's authentic, if it's real, or if it's a tabloid show. I don't think you'd do it if it was. But stay on this side of it. Stay on the good side. Yeah.
Well, they actually made a great effort on this case. They made a bigger effort than I've ever seen any other show do. I mean, they brought in all kinds of equipment. We had more sophisticated equipment investigating this case. We had a 24-hour surveillance system set up throughout the entire house, all because of their willingness to try to document the phenomena. So I was really very pleased with my experience with them.
Now, the parapsychologist thing, you probably get a bump here and there, but it doesn't pay the bills. Are you still hypnotizing and...
Yeah, I don't make any money doing this research. I don't charge for investigating haunted houses. I make a living as a hypnotist, and I help people quit smoking and lose weight.
Why do you stare at us when you say the smoking thing?
Because you guys have been telling me for years you're coming to see me to quit smoking, and your fans are still waiting.
Yeah, we're gonna
I'm trying to get him off him, but he's. Kerry, as always, it's just it's intoxicating when you come in here. Please come back and share with us whatever experiences that you have throughout this coming year.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Do you welcome anybody who wants to stop smoking or need hypnotism for any reason?
Oh, absolutely. That's what I do all day long and have been for 20 years.
Do you have a phone number you can give?
Sure. It's area code 310-452-4256.
Is that the phone number they use if they have something to report concerning...
yeah, you can use that phone number for either one.
All right, switchboarders have that phone number if you need to be hypnotized for beneficial reasons or if you need to, have your ghost checked.
So I guess a good call for you would be, there's a ghost in my house and I got to quit smoking.
or there's a smoking ghost in my house.
All right, now, and then again now, if you enjoyed the story you heard earlier about the lady who was being raped, it is documented, and it's a very well-made film with Barbara Hershey called The Entity, and it's rentable in your video stores. So if you want to get a copy of that, Kerry Gaynor is the parapsychologist who investigated that story, and that is the movie of his experiences with that. And so...
all right, Kerry, we'll see you next time, which should be probably Monday. We come over to the house.
And as we told you,
help us.
If you got a house going on with a lot of activity, you call Mark and Brian, we go with you, we fly all together, we spend the night.
We sleep with you.
We us
actually have to sleep with you.
In the same bed.
Will Brian really be there?
That's up to you. I mean,
Mark and I have done... You keep bringing, you've heard that I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to scary movies, but when it comes to this stuff, I want to see something.
Good.
I want
Great.
proof. There'd be no better thing tonight when it gets dark in my backyard for an alien ship to come down and they come off and just, hey, I wouldn't call the cops. I'd just find out what it'd be like.
So you'd be okay if you saw an apparition?
I don't know. Who would know?
Well, don't look behind you right now.
Now, let us ask you this.
That's not funny.
Now, in all your investigation,
I had to look.
Have you ever had one follow you home? We've always heard they follow you home.
No, it's never happened in all these years. I leave my work at the office, so it doesn't
they
follow
don't.
me.
Okay.
I leave my work at the office.
That's a good thing.
Hey, movies can't deal with them, but this, I would love to experience something like this.
Great, let's do it.
Don't forget to call us now.
Okay.
All right. Kerry, thank you again.
Thank you.
All right.